What a ball of positive energy. I'm very honored to be able to speak to all these young professionals, but I'm also very honored that Jan and the team chose the theme circular economy for this year's conference, because that's something which is very dear to my heart. Jan said, please don't only talk about the circular economy, because other people will be speaking about that and maybe are much more knowledgeable than I am after me, but please, are you willing, he said, to share some of your personal transformation, because that's actually what I think a lot of these younger professionals will be more interested in, and clarify how this guy, which was a typical example from the old linear economy, because that's where I came from when I started my career, how come this guy suddenly in his life somewhere changed and got so focused and passionate about the theme of circular economy and Africa, as you just heard as well. So this guy started his career a long time ago in the linear economy, and he said to himself, before my 40th, I have to become an executive board member of a publicly quoted company. Now, how crazy can you get if that is the scope of your life when you start your career? But that was what was happening. So I was on this path, and on top of that hill, I said, if I'm on top of that hill and I become a board member of a publicly quoted company, then I'm in Valhalla. And it was just when I was turning 40, you won't believe it, I was nominated in the executive board of this publicly quoted company in the Netherlands called Bols Westanen, a merger between the drinks and a food company. I won't go into that because it was a Harvard case of failed mergers, but that's when you learn the most, when things go wrong, and there were a lot of things went wrong. But when I was on top of that hill and I said, now I should be in Valhalla, I looked around and it was not at all the case. Big disappointment, big wake-up call. Apparently that was not the fulfilling thing in my life I was looking for. Then I went into, I did a management buyout, private equity, did a merger with Rémy Cointreau, became CEO there. A wonderful success story in the linear economy. On my way, when I was 45, I made probably the wisest decision, and I took a sabbatical. That was just after I stepped down as CEO of Rémy Cointreau, and I said, what am I going to do with the next phase of my life? And in that sabbatical, I asked myself the key question, what really makes you tick? What are you really all about? So really go deep inside yourself, meditation, mindfulness, all those wonderful techniques, and try to understand what this guy, Robert-Jan van Ogtrop, is really all about. And I got this crystal clear but totally unexpected answer: nature, nature, nature. And I said, nature? How can I integrate nature into my life? And where did this come from? It came from these walks with my grandfather when I was a small kid. My grandfather was Austrian, up in the mountains, 4 o'clock in the morning in the summer, when the sun started to rise, and you feel that moment of bliss. You really are hit by something extremely beautiful, the power and the beauty of nature. And I recognized that again when I was in Africa, initially for work, but also then I discovered the beauty and the power of nature, what that does to us. But then I said, okay, how do I integrate into my corporate life and being this important CEO and driving around with cars, with chauffeurs, etc.? How do I incorporate nature in my life? And that, in that sabbatical, was quite a challenge. So that took me to Africa. I read a lot of books, but I met some extremely inspiring people who had nothing to do with my corporate life. They couldn't care a heck about my corporate life. They were focusing on nature conservation, spending and dedicating their whole lives to rescuing the panda or the elephants. Well, the pandas are not in Africa, but really passionate about nature. And that really opened up my eyes. Said, these are the people I really connect with. This is great. How can I get more involved into all this? And the first thing I did after that sabbatical was set up a foundation called the Foundation for Natural Leadership. And what we do with the Foundation for Natural Leadership, we take corporate executives to Africa for a week in the bush. No luxury, no tents, no bed. You sleep under the sky, if it rains or not. That's just bad luck. You've got a campfire to keep you safe at night, because they're wild animals. You're in Big Five territory. And during that week, there's no luxury, there's no alcohol, there's no watches, there are no mobile phones. Again, you don't have a loo, you don't even have a shower. So all these corporate executives, corporate CEOs, just imagine if you look at their list of things they think are important in life, this should be the most miserable week of their life. But look at these surveys afterwards. 95% of the people on this trail said this has maybe been the most beautiful week of my life. So apparently we don't need all that luxury and alcohol and watches and mobile to really be happy, because that's what happens once you're in nature. And one of the people here, Jan van Bet, he said, what trickled you or made you set up Nudge? He was one of the participants on these trails of the FNL. So I think that's the real secret behind why Jan is doing what he's doing. Now, unfortunately, I can't take you all with me to Africa on a trail, but I would like to, why doesn't the next slide? Yeah, I would like to try to take you and just get a flavor of what it means going on a trail. So please bear with me. Sit straight on your chair. Close your eyes. Let's take 3 deep breaths. Okay, you're on trail with the FNL. You're deep in Africa in a wilderness area. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You're the 3rd night on the trail, and you have night watch. What does that mean, night watch? You have to take care of the camp, of the safety. So with your flashlight, every 10 minutes, while all your friends are sleeping, you have to walk around and be sure that the wild animals are kept far away. You've got 1.5 hours each, but you don't know what 1.5 hours is because you don't have a watch. But we've taught you, based on the stance of the moon and the stars, that you can tell time, because that's the beautiful way this system we live in, the universe, works. So you're staring at the moon, you're staring at the stars, you're in the middle of nature, and suddenly you'll hear a lion roaring in the distance. On the other side, you hear branches taken down by an elephant. And even further away, you hear the hyena yowling. And now, deep inside, you feel what it means to be part of this beautiful system, Mother Nature at work. A deep feeling of oneness, being interconnected with all living creatures on this planet, and the beauty which that brings with it. Now you can open your eyes again. So what happens during that trail is something extremely profound when you get that connection with this bigger system, with Mother Earth, this feeling of oneness. And that happened to me as well. And after setting up this foundation for natural leadership, I had the distinct feeling that when you're out there in nature, again, there's something, there it is, a distinct feeling that our system is in crisis. Something is not working well, because when you're at that trail and you had those eyes closed and you felt maybe, in fact, what it means to be connected with that bigger system, you ask the question, now what am I and what are we here to doing on this planet? We're building new roads, new cities. Did we ask that elephant? Did we ask that tree? That deeper feeling of an understanding that something is wrong the way we're living our life on this planet. And that came to this idea that there's something really wrong. There's a system in crisis, and it's not only an ecological crisis. It's also an economical crisis. It's a social crisis. Look at the huge widening gap of the have and have-nots, which is leading to a lot of tension on the world. But it's also an ethical crisis. Look what's happening in politics with the Trumps of this world, the Erdogans, the Duertes. I mean, things which you can feel, if we're very honest. We just feel that they're not right. It doesn't work the way it should work. It doesn't work the way this planet works. So with that feeling, if we can incorporate that after the trail, that these corporate executives, politicians go back to their jobs and take a little bit of that feeling with them and try to implement that in organizations, that's what we've been doing ever since with this Foundation for Natural Leadership. Now, after my 5th trail, 2010, and I'm a very hard case, normally people go 1 or twice on trail. I think, in fact, this Saturday I'm going, I think, on my 11th trail to Rwanda with a group, because I was a very hard case, and I'm still on my way trying to get rid and get loosened from that old linear world towards the new circular world. But after my 5th trail, I came back. It was in the Okavango Delta. And I had what I now know is called a lucid dream. I don't know if any of you ever had a lucid dream. Normally when I wake up in the morning, I know I've dreamt, but I could completely forget about what I've dreamt. When you have a lucid dream, you wake up the next morning and you know exactly what you've dreamt. And I had this dream that I had to set up, if you believe it or not, I had to set up a circle economy. And what did it look like in my dream? It was something like this. It was this circle with 5 inner circles representing the 5 stakeholders which were necessary to make system change happen, because that dream was about a systemic change which had to come about. And the 5 bubbles are government, so politics, the business world, the financial world. Oh, no, everything's going haywire here. The financial world, the world of education, and the world of finance. So those 5 bubbles, I had to create a platform where all those 5 bubbles come together, and together we then can create system change. You need to have a multi-stakeholder model to make that work. So there we started in 2010, setting up the circular economy. But before talking about the circular economy as an organization, which is based in the Netherlands, what is the circular economy all about? And again, there are speakers after me who will be explaining that, maybe also in more detail, but just trying to give you a little bit of a rundown. I've put down here 7 important points. The first is, it is an answer to the current linear economy, the take, make, waste economy. What's the take, make, waste economy? We continue to take new raw materials from Mother Earth. We pretend that they're infinite, but per definition they're not, because we live on a planet which is finite. We put them in a linear growth model. With that, we are depleting our natural resources for next generations, and we're creating huge piles of waste where we're literally now suffocating in our own waste, plastic in the ocean, toxic waste, nuclear waste, what have you. Not an intelligent system. It's just not a clever way to run our planet. The second point is, the circular economy is a natural solution. It's not about big brainy engineering stuff. The circular economy is nothing else than understanding that we happen to live on a planet which is a living planet, which functions in a fully circular manner. The shape of the planet, day and night, the 4 seasons, and before we were on the planet, and we're the last species here on the planet, there was no waste. Waste didn't exist in nature. So we've created with this linear economy an economy which generates these huge piles of waste which we're suffocating in. So now imagine if we would go back to the drawing board and we would design a new economy where waste doesn't exist because it's not necessary. And the good news is it can be done, and we are in the phase of doing it. Oh, again, the third point, which is maybe for the business people here, and you were mentioning it before in your speech, that this is also not only about global warming, CO2, feeling fuzzy, sustainable, looking for the next generation. Even if you wouldn't care a heck about all those themes, but you're a pure businessman who wants to make money, then still you have to look very seriously at the circular economy, because there are already now 5 reports done by McKinsey, a highly respected consultant, typically from the old linear world though, but they've come up with calculations, and I think the last calculation is that $1.8 trillion in Europe alone, $1.8 trillion in Europe alone can be saved if we move from the current linear economy to a circular economy. So there's a huge business case, a profitable business case beneath the circular economy because of the huge inefficiencies in the linear economy. The problem is that you need time, and we have to go through this transition together to make this happen. The next point is that it's about system change. I mentioned that before. Nobody can do this alone. You have to find ways of working together with all the relevant stakeholders. That's why we need to combine the business world, the financial world, the political world, the governments, the NGOs of the world, to make this system change happen. So that's very important. And the other point, it's behavioral change. That's where it really starts. We can design everything, we can make the most wonderful systems, but if we don't include the behavioral change on an individual level and on a societal level, it will never happen. And that means we again have to understand individually that if we want to continue life on this planet, also for our next generations, yes, the good news is there is a solution, but we're going to have to start cracking and working together to make that happen, because it's not going to happen by itself. So it's how we connect with Mother Nature, connect with all living beings on the planet, but mainly also how do we connect with each other? How do we treat each other? How do we treat each other in business, in our family life, etc., etc.? Very important part. Next point, shifting from the short-term shareholder model. We all are aware of, those of you who work for publicly quoted companies, the quarterly results, the focus on short-term results, that all belongs to the old past. That's the old linear world. If you want to talk about circular world, you're going to have to take a much more longer-term perspective. We have to at least look at periods of 5 years or longer to make things happen. And even in those 5 years, if you do it in the right way, they can also financially, besides the triple bottom line for the other factors, they can all work in a better way. And last point, the important change agent which really comes to help, and that's the beauty of living in this moment, and that's why probably things like circular economy are now starting to boom. If we can use the Internet of Things, the digitization, I'm sure that IBM will talk after me and explain the wonderful possibilities which this gives us, because now with this technology where we're seeing a horizontalization of the world, we can break down the vertical power bases of the old vested interest worlds, we can break down the old banking system, the old energy systems, and make them more horizontally connected. A lot of internet startups, new companies, new ways of working, the whole issue of the shared economy, which is part of circular economic thinking, fits into that beautifully. So what's next? This again is what we call the value hill. Just to explain again the linear economy. The linear economy here, we start with extraction of materials, manufacturing, assembly, then retail, then we use it, and what do? Then we throw everything away, and we just destroy all the value we've been building up in all those periods of time. We just throw things away. How crazy can you get? The circular economy, you see the same on the left, but we don't throw them away. We start on the top with repairing, then we reuse them, or we refurbish them, or we remanufacture, and only at the end, the last thing is recycling. A lot of people think circular economy is only about recycling. That's the last thing you do. If you can't do any of the prior things which add in principle more value, that's only when you start recycling. So there's a huge value creation if we do it in the right way. This is a slide I've taken from Systemic, one of the best consultants in the world if it comes to circularity, where they just again explain what circular economy is all about. It's about regeneration, so using, of course, instead of fossil fuels, renewable, sharing, again, the sharing of assets. There are tons of examples out there, Car2Go, Airbnb, all ways of using the existing asset base of the world in a much more clever way. Optimize, so increase performance and efficiency of the products, leveraging big data, automation, etc. The loop, so closing the loops. Waste does not exist. Try to get that in your system. Just if we would be able to run a world where waste doesn't exist, you get such a lot of creative ideas, and that I'll give you a few examples of how you can change the business systems. Virtualize, so dematerializing, and again exchange, so replacing old things with new materials, applying new technologies like 3D printing, etc., etc. So circular economy, this slide actually only wants to underline the fact it's much more than just recycling. Circular economy is a philosophy, is a systemic change, is running the planet in a much more clever way, using all the natural resources in a much more clever way, and making it also economically more beneficial than the current linear system. Now, just a couple of examples. We don't have enough time to go through many, but I just want to take 3 examples to try to show you that circular economy means, again, more than only recycling. First is Philips. After having done a very successful project with Philips with LED lighting, LED lighting, I'm going to take another example in the medical division, which we started afterwards. The idea with Philips, if you look at their medical division, they sell these very expensive assets, MRI scans, röntgen scans to hospitals. In the old linear model, when you create these beautiful machines and these high technology, actually you hope that in a couple of years down the line, when you come up with new technology, what happens, the hospital throws away those very expensive assets because now they're going to buy a new machine from Philips, which is good for Philips for their P&L, because now they're selling new machines. And now we're throwing away very valuable assets just because a new machine is coming. How stupid can we get? If you look at a circular model, Philips is now not selling those machines to the hospitals anymore. Philips remains owner of these machines. They or sell the services of the machine, or they lease the machine, rent the machines, but they remain owner. Now they have all the interest in the world to make machines which last much longer. They build them in a modular way, And then underway, when technology arises and new things happen, you just replace modularly parts of that machine, and instead of the machine depreciating very fast in the old system, actually the machine starts to appreciate in its lifetime, because over time the machine is becoming more and more valuable because you're adding new technology over the years to come. And when the machine, maybe after 10 or 20 years, is really run down, Philips knows where that machine stands, knows exactly which components are in it, brings it back to their factories where they've already designed the factory in a way that they know that that machine is coming in, that they can take everything apart, reuse all the components to again build new machines. Now you're making system change. Now together we are adding a huge amount of value, and we're not throwing away all these very valuable materials which we've been doing before. So that's one example. Second example is Bioenergy in the Netherlands, and a company which uses waste streams. We're building a plant as we speak on the harbor of Amsterdam, where you use waste streams, you gasify them with a new technology from the States. Biogas comes out, or syngas comes out. Part of it goes directly to the gas net. Part of it we transform into green electricity. Part of it is heat, which we serve for the city of Amsterdam to heat the city. And the rest product is biochar, which we throw on the agricultural fields, and it restores the topsoil of the very weakened soil. So that's a fully circular process project using negative waste streams, creating green energy and biochar. And the next thing we're going to be developing is biohydrogen, very much for the hydrogen industry, which is becoming a booming industry as well. Last, automotive, just briefly in Europe, 92% of the time cars are standing still. Can you imagine designing a business model where you have such expensive assets, 100,000, 50,000 euros a piece, and then 92% of the time they're standing still, just because we are convinced that you have to have a BMW, or Mr. BMW's over there, or a Mercedes in front of your door, because that is the way the consumerism and the way advertising works, because now I'm profiling myself because I'm owning a BMW or Mercedes. But 92% of the time they're standing still. Now, if you use the new technologies of Tesla, self-driving cars, Google, what am I forgetting? Well, whatever, the Uber, of course, you don't need all these cars, because everybody can, you just call your car without a driver, you drive wherever you want to drive, and the next time it drives again. So look at the amount of assets which would come down, the amount of money we save, the amount of parking spaces in the cities we save. So that's a new way of thinking. I have the feeling I have to rush. Yes, nobody can do it alone. I already talked about that. That's why we need to work together. This thing doesn't want to move again, so I have to go here. Circular economy. This is the social enterprise which was founded in 2010 in the Netherlands. We've got now 40 brilliant people working, average age 30, 35, next generation thinking, trying to change the world, trying to assist this transition to a circular economy. We do that by focusing very much on sectors. We started with the textile sector, the biggest polluting sector, the second biggest polluting sector in the world. Just think about the amount of textiles we again throw away. So there are all kinds of fascinating ways how you can recycle but also change business models. We're now moving into the built environment world, where there's a lot to gain by building buildings which the new buildings can generate energy instead of consuming energy, and the finance world as a facilitating factor. Now the cities is the program where we believe that's the way to internationalize the circular economy. That's the way we can all help and assist this transition. So we've chosen for cities, we've signed MOUs with the C40, the largest 120 cities in the world, and with ICLEI, there are 1,500 cities in the world, to see with our tooling, which is called the Circle City Scan, how you can scan a city, map how you can make it circular, and with that make that transition to the circular economy and roll it now out also internationally. Briefly on, I think I should still have to say this. There are two very important programs in the world at the moment which are getting a lot of attention. CO2 global warming. Last week there was a huge issue on that. We've done a study 2 years ago about the correlation between circular economy and CO2 global warming. and of the existing gap which we still have to fill in the world to reach the 1.5% or the 1.5 Celsius, 50% of that can be achieved by moving to a circular economy. So there's a huge correlation between solving the CO2 problem and circular economy. And the second is the Sustainability Development Goals of the United Nations. We're doing a study as we speak at the moment, together with the United Nations, on the, again, correlation between circular economy and the SDGs. And the first indications are roughly that probably if you move to a circular economy, you'll cover about 60 to 70% of the SDGs. So again, a huge correlation with what's going on, very important work which is going on international level. Then the last thing I'm just going to mention, in Davos, January 2018, we launched this report, the Global Circularity Report. What is that all about? It's similar to the CO2 gap report of the United Nations, where we measure every year the CO2 gap. We've now launched this Circularity Gap report. The first report in January says that in the world, we're at 9.1% circularity, meaning we've got 91% to go. Huge challenge. We're going to launch the second report in January again and see how far we've come this year. And the idea is that every year, together with the World Economic Forum, World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and United Nations, we are going to monitor on a global level where we stand in terms of the circularity gap. And I think I'm really there, so you can be happy. These are all the organizations we work through, and now we can open it up for Q&A, and you're going to tell us how to do it. Thank you very much.